And as board president, and on behalf of my fellow board members, our hardworking staff, and all of our graduates, members, activists, and in particular, Greater Boston Interfaith Organization, a partner in this campaign, I welcome you all to MAHA's home, the Sheridan Hagens Homeownership Center. We are very excited to have Mayor Wu and her team with us today for an exciting announcement on housing and home ownership. When I migrated from Barbados to Boston in 1990, I was not sure if I would ever become a homeowner. At that time, it seemed to be such an unreachable goal. In 2003, I took a class at MAHA, and that began the process that not only led to my home ownership, but that of my daughters as well. There she is right in the photo. Home ownership is so important, and especially from one generation to the next. But of course, I'm preaching to the choir, right? MAHA is dedicated to making sure all of us have a chance at home ownership, and I am moved and proud to be its board president. When Mayor Wu ran for office last year, she was very clear in her support for first-time home ownership, first-generation home buyers. She spoke eloquently about the importance of making progress on home ownership for our tenants who want to buy, for neighborhood stability, as we stand against further gentrification. I feel like I want to bite my tongue on that one. And for our city as a whole. Today, she's putting those words into action, and I'm very pleased to introduce to you Boston's incredible mayor, Michelle Wu.
Is it morning or afternoon? Good afternoon, everyone, just by a minute. I'm so grateful to be here again. This is a space where incredible things happen, and it happens not just for the people who usually are sitting in the seats in this room learning and taking notes on how to get through very complex processes, but the impact happens for the generations to come after that, the kids in our schools who have a little bit more stability and joy at home, for the grandparents who have family nearby, because we're able to keep our communities, keep our neighborhoods together and connected. Homeownership is so critical to our goals and our future as a city. It's crucial to building generational wealth and long-term stability for families, and I couldn't think of a city with more committed community partners and leaders and grassroots organizing efforts to make sure that from all sides we are doing everything possible to build a city for everyone. So I'm incredibly thankful to MAHA, to GBIO, to all of our partners who continually push the city to do more. And this is an area where, in years past, sometimes we've thought about homeownership and housing as a state or federal issue, right? It is too big. How can we possibly try to affect something as large as the housing market, which is controlled and pushed and pulled by the forces of markets across the world? But what this organization did, and what organizers throughout our neighborhoods have done, is to say, one family at a time, we are going to make sure that people have the tools that they need, the knowledge and power to move forward on that, and the funding and the financing to make that a reality.
Yeah.
And we are moving against a legacy and generations of actions before that have built up barriers, specifically in the way for families of color. Because of decades of discriminatory lending practices, a history of redlining, homeownership in Boston today still varies largely by race. 44% of white households in Boston own the homes they live in, compared to just 31% of black households, 30% of Asian American households, 17% of Latinx households. And many first-generation home buyers also face higher barriers to homeownership, such as in securing funds for down payments and closing costs. We have an opportunity to change that in Boston, to transform what homeownership looks like today and for generations to come. And that is why we are investing in this budget $106 million in our homeownership programs. Now, I want to thank my council colleagues because from the start, this budget process has been different than in years past. The beginning of this process started from community and resident input, with sessions co-hosted by the City Council and the Budget Office and our administration to hear directly from residents on how their dollars, our taxpayer dollars, our shared prosperity should be spent. And I've never been one to just aim for numbers as an announcement. Right? This is about people and this is about impact. And so what is this $106 million actually going to do? This will allow the City of Boston, under the incredible leadership of Chief Sheila Dillon, our administration and the City Council and our community partners, to do several important buckets of work. One is to expand the One Plus Boston Mortgage Program, which provides expanded discounts which will expand discounts on interest rates and also support down payment assistance, including for first-generation home buyers. This will also help accelerate the construction of affordable home ownership units. There are partners waiting to help put forward ideas for affordable housing in vacant lots throughout our city, in housing that currently exists but could be redeveloped. And sometimes they're just missing a sliver of financing that the City of Boston has been able, with our federal funds, to support. And this investment will help us stretch that impact for even more families. And I want to note that $106 million for homeownership is not enough. It is still just a drop in the bucket, but we are trying to change that bucket and rebuild the entire system. And so along with that, this $106 million for homeownership is part of our larger allocation towards housing stability as the foundation for our recovery. $380 million over the next 3 years for housing from our city budget to ensure that we are supporting first-time home buyers, building generational wealth, creating the processes, the people power, the organizing to make sure that even after this particular batch of funds has been spent, that the next bit of funds will have even greater impact because we have transformed and built the infrastructure for these processes to move faster, to reach more people, and to ensure that our residents are leading the way in building this. And so this all is to bring Boston one step closer to being a Green New Deal city, one in which great jobs are connected by great transit to affordable homes for everyone, and in which we're investing for decades to come in our future as a city, one that will continue to lead across the country in this moment. Okay. Otra vez en español. Hoy estamos aquí con líderes en la comunidad y con organizaciones que crean el impacto cada día en nuestra ciudad. La propiedad de la vivienda es muy importante para crear riqueza generacional y estabilidad a largo plazo para las familias. El 44% de los residentes blancos de Boston son propietarios de sus viviendas, frente al 31% de los residentes negros y 17% de los residentes latinos. Muchos compradores de vivienda de primera generación enfrentan obstáculos para ser propietarios también. Obstáculos como tener suficiente dinero para los pagos iniciales y los gastos de cierre. En ese momento tenemos la oportunidad de cambiar esa situación y de transformar el concepto de propiedad de la vivienda en Boston. Por eso estamos invirtiendo $106 millones en nuestros programas de adquisición de viviendas. Gracias. Vamos a proporcionar mayores descuentos en las tasas de interés, apoyar los programas de ayuda a pago inicial y acelerar la construcción de unidades de vivienda asequible en la relación con organizaciones como MAHA y GBIO. Esto forma parte de nuestro mayor compromiso para abordar la crisis de la vivienda en Boston. En total, estamos proponiendo $308 millones para viviendas asequibles. Esos fondos van a apoyar los programas existentes para los compradores de vivienda, crear riqueza generacional para más familias de Boston y acercar a Boston un paso más para convertirse en una ciudad asequible para todos nuestros residentes. Thank you so much. And there's an illustrious speaking program after me, so I'm going to hand it over to our Chief of Housing, Sheila Dillon, who will be followed by our incredible colleagues on the City Council.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon. For folks that don't know me, my name is Sheila Dillon, and I am Chief of Housing for the City of Boston, and I'm really very, very excited to be here. So we're here to celebrate, and I think it is a celebration, the Mayor's commitment to expand homeownership opportunities, especially for moderate income families that want to stay in Boston. So many families want to stay in Boston. We hear this every single day, but with rising costs and competition to buy, they're being pushed out. It's also very important, and the Mayor did this, to acknowledge that homeownership rates for Black, Asian, Hispanic households are much lower than the citywide average. So these new resources must be very intentional and help us correct this inequity. Working with MAHA, banks, nonprofits, and developers, we're going to use this fund wisely. I'm very excited to get the approvals and start spending and making real impact. We're going to make significant investments in our down payment, our closing cost programs like the Mayor mentioned, write down mortgage interest rates, and build very, very high quality green homes that our residents can afford. And as we continue to explore, and get this money out the door, I also want to be open to ideas, right? We're always looking for ideas. How do we increase our homeownership rates in Boston, which are lower than the statewide average? So if you have good ideas, you have innovative things you want us to try, please come forward. Now is the time. We want to look at student debt. We want to look at other barriers that are keeping people away from buying their own home. Just in closing, I do want to thank our partners, and I want to start with MAHA for their continued advocacy. MAHA has been doing this for decades. I mean, a very long period of time before we all came to the realization that home ownership was critical for so many reasons, right? It builds generational wealth, it stabilizes neighborhoods, it gives families security. It's actually a form of rent control in so many ways. But MAHA knew this, and they just had to convince all of us to get on. And so I want to thank you. You've never given up. And I also would be amiss if I didn't acknowledge GBIO, who's been really, helping, leading the charge and getting more investment into homeownership programs, and our wonderful city councilor, who's really going to, I think, be very interested as the ARPA hearings begin and the budget hearings take place, how this money is going to be spent, how are we going to get it on the street and have the biggest impact. So I look forward to those dialogues and those conversations. So with that, I think I'm going to hand this over to Councilor closest to me, Bach, who is now overseeing the ARPA funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila, and thank you, Mayor, and thank you to MAHA and GBIO and all the advocates. Affordable home ownership in Boston is really a people's movement. The first time actually I was ever in this literal room was when advocates from MAHA and GBIO and many other corners of the city were starting to scheme about passing the Community Preservation Act. And that was back in 2015. And I think it's worth noting that out of that movement came not only the passage of the Community Preservation Act, but the creation of the One Plus Boston mortgage program, which is what we're talking about in part expanding today. And really this move, as the Mayor said, toward more and more of a commitment on the city side to home ownership. So the city has never made a commitment on this scale before, and I think it's an incredible opportunity. I'm really looking forward in our committee over the coming weeks to, as Sheila said, digging in and making sure that, you know, every dollar of this is being spent in ways that are models, so that we know that we're doing work that can turn into bigger and bigger impacts. But as the mayor said, you know, every family that we anchor in the city of Boston, it has an enduring and a kind of exponential impact, right? They anchor our communities. We keep multiple generations here. It really just, the impact spreads and spreads. And I just want to recognize that when we talk about models, again, MAHA in this building really came up with the first in the country, first generation homebuyer program, Stash. And And when we talk about closing the racial wealth gap, and we talk about the racial targeting of our discriminatory homeownership lending policies in this country over so many decades, we have to have programs and policies that approach that issue thinking about who is most encountering those historic barriers that we've set up and how do we knock them down. And so I think like the fact that there's an opportunity here for the city to expand its commitment to first generation home buying and really help families for the first time get on that ladder is so exciting. So, you know, I did a little bit of work on this back when I was at the Boston Housing Authority, thinking about how we get folks who live in public housing onto this home ownership ladder. Again, it's transformational for our families. So we will be having hearings in the coming weeks about the whole package of COVID recovery dollars for the city, and we'll be digging in on every aspect of that, making sure that these are things that are, you know, meeting the urgent moment, that are dealing with our systemic challenges, leaving a lasting impact after the money is spent, and really, you know, ensuring that we're building up public goods in our communities and building good jobs. But I got to say, not to tip my hand, but the city council, I think, is quite united with the mayor in this moment in recognizing that home ownership is a key component of the housing plan that we have to have when we talk about a Green New Deal and a basis for a just recovery in this city. So really looking forward to the work ahead, and thrilled to be here today to celebrate with many of my favorite people and the people who have taught me what long-burning, hard-working, focused community advocacy really looks like. So thank you. And I want to call up another counselor, beloved of this organization, who has provided much pro bono support for it, Counselor Ruth C. Lujan.
Hello, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Bonjour. My name is Ruth C. Louisiane, and I'm an at-large city councilor, and I'm so happy to be here at MAHA, which does feel like a second home. Symone and your leadership stewarding this after Tom, I'm just so happy and thrilled for MAHA, to Hillary, to everyone, is that Thadeen? To Thadeen, to everyone who is involved in really stewarding this organization. So my intro to MAHA was before I was elected. I was just, you know, a black woman in Boston trying to buy a home. And I was like, you know, my parents, working class Haitian family here, we do not have that intergenerational wealth. So it was all on me. But I had to figure out how to do it. And I found MAHA. And I took my first time home buyers class led by Sarah, Homeownership Advisor. I don't know where Sarah is. She stepped out. Oh, there you go, Sarah. And so I wanna thank her because, you know, I'm a lawyer who's represented families facing eviction and foreclosure, but buying your first home is a really daunting experience. And so that I was able to lean on MAHA, you know, was really tremendous. And as of 2 months, I've been a new homeowner. It took a while, but it happened. And before it happened, I was like, you know, thinking about how to make everything work. And I was like, Percy, like, I need to, like, get an inspector. I need to figure out, like, what bank to go to. And Percy just, like, was there for me 2 years after I took the class, right? Yeah. MAHA is a family. The Masters of Affordable Housing Alliance, what you guys create, and the way that you bring people into the fold to organize, to really participate. And I knew that I could call Percy, right? I knew that I could call Symone, I could call Hillary, I could call Barbara, whoever I needed to help guide me through the process. And so I thank you, MAHA. Right? This $106 million commitment is a result of your steady advocacy and organizing, and we're just following you as you lead the way. I want to thank GBIO for your commitment to really making sure that we are sending the needs of working class families, of black and brown families who are often and currently and have been historically excluded from the table. I want to thank, I think Beckma is in the house when we're talking about closing that racial wealth gap and the work that we need to do to make sure that we are finally centering our families that have always been ignored. So I thank you. I know that the residents of Boston thank you as we continue to make housing a priority, as we continue to focus on increasing One Plus Boston, as we get more banks to really join and really convince them to join by talking to them about the legacies of racism, of blockbusting and redlining, and how we all belong together really in solving the problem. And banks really need to be leaning into that. The city, I'm encouraged by the work of our city council, the work of MAHA, GBIO, our mayor for this commitment. Of course, Chief Dillon for your steady leadership on housing issues in the city of Boston. And I'm really excited for the work that's to come. So thank you, Merci un pile. I'm still new to this, y'all. I want to call up my colleague on City Council, Ricardo Arroyo, also a big supporter of homeownership here.
Hello, everybody. Not much I can really add that's new. I just want to also thank MAHA for all the work they've done. Their work over decades has helped generations of Bostonians and folks in Massachusetts, and that's a real impact, and this is just a continuation of the work that I know you're going to continue to do. GBIO for helping marshal all of those advocates and folks who really are members of our community who have been under pressure for so long, decades actually. A number of people that I have grown up with have had a very difficult time purchasing homes in the same neighborhoods in which they were raised, in which their families have lived for quite some time. We know that the increasing rents and the increasing home values has priced out so many of our residents, especially our Black and Latino residents and residents of color who have faced economic hardship due to racial barriers that have been put in place over generations. And this kind of action, this kind of significant action, over $100 million towards affordable housing, and not just affordable housing, but affordable home ownership, which for so many in our communities has been an oxymoron. The idea of affordable home ownership seeming out of reach for so many. That's, I think, a foundational piece of the American dream. It's a foundational piece to stabilizing our communities, to making sure that our folks are able to raise their children here, to deal with their school systems here, to deal with their work in neighborhood income and economics. And so making sure that we are building pathways to home ownership, which the mayor has done here. I want to thank you as well for answering that call and for making sure that folks were heard and that we are putting resources in place to really back up what we say. And so thank you to all the advocates and community members who made this possible, because I know that this $106 million is going to make impacts not just in this generation of people who are getting that, but in future generations of folks who are going to be able to live in homes and to have homes in Boston that they can call their own. And so this is fantastic and phenomenal. So thank you to everybody who has done the work to get this done.
Good afternoon. Before I speak, I would like to invite Zainab Shaib, our Stash and One Plus Boston homeowner, followed by Jenny Marcelin, MAHA activist, Stash participant, and hopefully a home buyer soon. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Mayor. My name is Zainab Shoaib, and I am a first-time home buyer, and I'm just here to share my story. This all started with a dream, a vision, and by faith. And through prayer and intercession, I began to feel that, to get a sense that my time in my apartment building was coming to an end. And a couple of things happened along the way that kind of solidified that, that dream and that vision for me. Just a few days later, my car that was parked on the street got hit. There was no note left, so I was left to pay a very high deductible for repairs. And then later on, I got a notice from my apartment management that they were going to increase my rent by about 20%. I couldn't understand why in the middle of a pandemic, this was in 2020, they were going to increase my rent, but eventually they decided not to increase my rent. And then, although my apartment that I lived in at that time was a non-smoking building, we had a new neighbor who moved in next door, and we started to smell smoke. Unfortunately, my daughter and I were being exposed to secondhand smoke. And all of this just kind of culminated in me starting to press in to find out how I can get a home. But being a single mom, the task was very daunting. And I remember talking to a friend back in November of 2020, and she encouraged me to see if the city had any program for first-time home buyers. And so I did my research, and I found out about the One Plus Boston. And I loved that it encouraged people who lived in Boston to still buy homes in Boston, because that was what I was desiring to do, because I didn't want to change my daughter's school. And so in just looking through the requirements for the One Plus Boston, one of them was to take a home buyers class. And I found out about MAHA through that process. And so I enrolled in a home buyers class. And I found that MAHA, the classes taught me a lot. And MAHA was a place where I found community. And it seemed like everybody was rooting for me to succeed. And as a first-generation home buyer, I also qualified for the STASH program, which came in very, very handy. Eventually, in October of 2021, I closed on my home, and we moved into our new home in October. And it's been so good having a home with deeded off-street parking, and a place where my daughter can be outdoors riding her bike and just be in nature. And finally, I would just like to thank the city of Boston, to thank MAHA, to thank my family and friends who prayed me through this whole process. And most of all, I'm grateful to God who made the impossible possible for me. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Bonjour, bonsoir. Bonsoir. My name is Jenny Marcelin. I am a Boston resident living in Hyde Park with my 2 young children who attend Boston public schools. Thank you for being here this morning to announce this historic funding. It is important to me and to thousands of families like mine. I migrated to Boston from my country, Haiti, 21 years ago. I attended the Perkins Community Center Adult Learning Program and the Haitian Multi-Service Catholic Charities, where I took English as a second language classes. Afterwards, I earned a bachelor's degree from UMass Boston, an MBA from Cambridge College. I recently earned an associate degree in opticianry from Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology, where I currently employ full-time. I thought my hard work and academic accomplishment would be a foundation for financial stability. But I found myself unable to achieve the American dream of home ownership. I want the security and the peace of mind that would come with controlling my own housing. For me, home ownership would mean never fearing another rent increase, never worrying about having to move because the landlord wants me out with my kids. It would also mean building equity and a more financially secure future for my children. Why? Despite all of my hard work and all I've accomplished, has this goal been out of reach? Because my family of 3 lives on my one income. My rent is very high, and I have to pay my debt to the federal government and the state of Massachusetts that lent me money to attend college. I also have to support my relatives and friends back home in Haiti. Accumulating a down payment is impossible. In addition, there are almost no homes on the market that would be in my price range. We desperately need affordable homes to buy. I am a leader in MAHA. because of our work together. It gives me hope, not only for myself, but for all the hard-working people just like me. It means I have a voice, and together, our voices can be heard. I want to thank you, Mayor Wu, Housing Chief Dillon, and all 13 city councilors for meeting with MAHA members and hearing our voices. Now, with $106 million for home ownership that the administration has proposed, and all 13 councilors have publicly committed to support, achieving the American dream looks more possible. Having my own place will let my kids be free to be kids, and I will eliminate it will eliminate for me one of the many stressors that come with parenting. You know, I have a place to call home. Thank you. And now I would like to go to the podium, the GBL.
Hi, my name is Beverly Williams, and I am a native of Boston. I grew up in public housing. I lived in rental units, and now I am a proud owner of a home, and I have been in my home for 30 years. This is a new day, and it is very, very different. Very different. And I really want to say that investment in all types of affordable housing is important to build towards generational wealth. Because if it was not for programs like public housing and for rental assistance, I may not have made it to becoming a homeowner in Boston. And so I want to say that it is all important, and I want to thank you, Mayor Wu and Chief Housing Sheila Dillon, yes. Now, I know it's Sheila Dillon. I wanted to get your title correct. But I really want to thank you for the work that you have done to help make this actualized. And I just want to let you know that on behalf of the 62 Greater Boston Interfaith organizations, that we support the bill from the American Rescue Package, and we also support how you bridged it with the city budget, because we know that it has to be bridged. This is the largest investment that has been made, and we want to thank MAHA, especially Symone and Hillary, for the work that you have done. We know that you have been a front runner and you have been a hustler. I had told people a few months ago to put your boots on and to hit the pavement. That was not something that I had to say to MAHA. MAHA has always had their feet to the pavement and has been hustling, and so I thank you very much. And I am so proud that MAHA is a member and a partner with GBIO. And I want to say that the dollar amount that went into your budget, the American Rescue Plan and city budget for housing, is the largest ever, and it should be celebrated. But on a personal note, Mayor Wu, what I want to celebrate is your courage to move on common sense, to move with integrity and empathy towards housing justice. And I know that you have not heard a big round of applause from GBIO, only because we have been in Brady Bunch boxes on Zoom. And so I would like to make a loud noise for you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Wow. My name is Symone Crawford. I am the Executive Director for the Massachusetts Affordable Housing Alliance, known as MAHA. My story parallels a lot of the women that you see here today. I took a class, got involved in community organizing, start volunteering, served on the board, joined the team, and look at me, standing as the executive director. What a big day this is, right? Yes. This is amazing. Today, Mayor Wu is giving hope to hundreds of home buyers who fear they might have leave the city because home prices and interest rates are rising. She's investing in and expanding programs that we know work, like Stash and 1+ Boston. And she is committing to building more homes that our graduates can afford. As you think about 5,200 people graduating from MAHA in the past 2 years, just one organization. Thank you. We are thrilled to stand here today in a city where we are not afraid to be bold. We are thrilled that Mayor Wu and our city councilors understand the needs of thousands of MAHA buyers and graduates. And I'm proud of our MAHA community leaders who have worked so diligently to make this happen. This is an amazing accomplishment and a strong foundation for all of us to build on. Homeownership has been so important in my life, and I've seen firsthand the transformational effect it can and does have. Too many people of color have been shut out of homeownership for too long in this country. And today we are standing together here in Boston to take action in narrowing that racial homeownership gap. I want to say thank you again to our allies, GBIO and others across the city who supported our call for a greater investment in homeownership. We have much work to do still. With our lenders, with our state and federal partners, but today is a great beginning of an effort that will mean hundreds of new buyers in our city. Thank you so very much for coming.
We can take questions for any of the speakers or on-topic questions. If they're off-topic questions, we can chat to the side after. Okay, think of your questions while we take a picture.
Just so excited. This is a great time. Yes.
All right, everyone right here. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. And one more time. 1, 2, 3. Great, thank you. Thank you. No questions. All this policy detail, Sheila's ready to go. No questions.
Anyone have questions? You're good? Okay, great.